Barker, the finest and most distinctive English quality shoes in the world. Our journey today begins in the design room at Barker's headquarters as we follow the production of a Norfolk Brogue pair of shoes. Inspired by international trends in fashion, Barker's exclusive in-house designers create the new season's range. Once a style has been selected for prototyping, a paper pattern is cut to ensure a perfect fit around the contours of the foot. The balance of shape, style, fit and comfort are all important. A style specification sheet is drawn up and placed in a sample box together with the pattern and delivered by the designer to the clicking or cutting room. Down in the Barker leather room, skins arrive from all over the world. Burnished leather from Italy, calf skin from Germany, kid from India. Every delivery is inspected rigorously as an experienced hand and eye checks for consistent thickness in the leather. Here, the shoe upper sections are prepared using a clicking knife or a clicking press. The clicker considers the shape, stretch and shading of the leather, avoiding any natural flaws, as every piece is individually cut and matched to make a perfect pair of shoes. Then the pattern on the wing toe caps is created using a die punching machine. The shoe upper and lining sections are stitch marked, and the seam allowance is reduced for comfort by shaving a fine layer off the leather in a process called skiving. Stiffening is heat bonded to the quarter linings in order to strengthen and support the eyelet holes. The tongue linings are glued to the tongue uppers to secure them prior to stitching, and the lining pieces are sewn together. A royal perforating machine is used to decorate the upper pieces with punch holes, a distinguishing characteristic of the classic English brogue. The quarter linings are top stitched using a contrast thread and then machine stitched to the vamp. In a single process called underedge trimming, the lining is top stitched to the outer shoe and the underedge removed at the same time. Once the top line of the shoe has been pressed to give a firm edge, the eyelet holes are reinforced with eyelets. Latex glue is applied to the reverse of the outers and lining seams, which are then sandwiched together and machine pressed to ensure full bonding prior to stitching. Then final rows of top stitching secure the vamp to the quarter linings. Our shoe begins to take recognizable shape. A special toe puff is glued, then inserted and heat pressed into the shoe to maintain shape and form in this important area. Finally, the uppers are roughed to ensure good adhesion when placed around the last. In this department, the bottom components of the shoe are cut and prepared. Every outer sole is individually press cut from a bend of leather and a water-based cement applied to the flesh side. They are then left to dry for half an hour. The outer soles are then heat molded to give a natural shape contoured to the foot. The insoles are prepared in a similar way. In this style of shoe, an upstanding rib is hand machined to each insole in preparation for the lasting of the upper. The correct size and shape of last is selected and the insole attached using 4 staples. The uppers, which have been placed in a steam mulling cabinet to soften and become malleable, are removed and stiffeners placed into the heel of the shoe. The uppers are then eased around the last by hand and temporarily back-tacked to ensure they remain balanced. front section of the shoe is steamed again to soften the toe puff, and in a process called pull-toe lasting, the upper is machine pulled and secured over the forepart of the last. Then the shoe is temporarily side-lasted by hand, which enables the craftsman to bring the materials to the wooden last with the least possible strain. Finally, the shoe is seat-lasted using a machine which places 22 tacks automatically into the seat of the shoe. Next, the rib is side-stapled to the upper and the temporary tacks removed. The shoe is placed in a heat setter which removes remaining moisture from the leather and sets the shoe to the shape of the last. The shoes are examined and any minor blemishes smoothed away. The staples which secure the insole to the last are removed and any excess in the upper and lining is trimmed. A Goodyear welt is sewn in to combine the welt, upper and lining to the wall of the insole. Then the welt is machine beaten to create a clean edge against the upper and to ensure that the outer sole when applied sits neat to the welt. The seat lift is stapled to the insole and the welt excess cut away in preparation for the outer sole. Using hot wax, a poplar wood shank is cemented to the lower part of the insole to ensure both longitudinal stability in the waist of the shoe and support of the foot whilst walking. In a process called bottom filling, a soft cork filling is applied to the front of each sole for comfort and flexibility, and a hard cork filling to the waist and seat to give stability. This is left overnight to set. Cement is pasted to the underside of the shoe and a warmed outer sole applied. 650 pounds of pressure per square inch is brought to bear for approximately 12 seconds. To ensure full adhesion, the welt is then beaten. 7 rivets secure the sole to the shoe's seat lift, and in the same process the welt and sole are rough rounded and a groove made in the outer sole. The sole and the welt are then lock stitched together. In the final stage of making, 300 pounds of pressure is rolled twice over the shoe's outer sole. This process is called bottom levelling and ensures that the soles are shaped to the natural contours of the foot. In the finishing room, the uppers are burnished on rollers which are coated with a special wax to protect the leather from burning. The welt and the outer sole are edge trimmed square, and the waist of the shoe is beveled. The shoe is temporarily removed from the last, and the heel machine attached through the inner using 10 serrated nails. Any excess material in the heel is trimmed away and the heel is scoured, smoothed, superfined and cornered. The sole is jointed to produce a smooth curve between heel and waist. And the edge is inked using a water-based colour. The shoes are then passed through a heater to dry out. In 4 separate processes, wax is applied to the sole and heel edge by hand and machine pad, then sealed under a hot iron to protect the leather. The underside of the shoe is finally scoured to remove any debris, and 2 coats of wax-based stain are rubbed in by hand before a final application of Brazilian carnauba wax is buffed to a subtle sheen. Lastly, in a process called bunking, a decorative pattern is embossed on the sole using a red-hot iron. In shoe-room processing, the uppers of every pair of shoes are cleaned and any stitch marks and grease marks removed, ready for final presentation. The shoes are slipped from the last and each sole heat stamped with the Goodyear welt and custom grade mark. A last coat of cream is applied by hand to each shoe. Heel cushions are inserted before socks bearing the Barker brand are carefully placed inside. It is at this stage that a final and rigorous inspection of every finished shoe takes place. An experienced eye checks for the slightest visual or construction imperfections. Only when a shoe has met the Barker standard of craftsmanship embodied in over a century of shoemaking are they approved for packaging. Each shoe is stuffed with tissue paper and placed into individual shoe bags and boxes bearing the Barker brand. A special Barker care guide is included. The shoes are now ready for dispatch and are taken to the warehouse at the Earls Barton site in readiness for transport to the shops. Barker have been making quality shoes for almost 120 years. Every one a masterpiece created by the finest craftsmen from the finest leathers on the finest lasts in time-honored tradition. Barker shoes appeal to every generation and combine classic English shoemaking with distinctive contemporary styling. Today, the Barker heritage of excellence is recognized throughout the world by discerning customers who demand the finest from their footwear. Barker craftsmen ensure that they are never disappointed. In every country of the world, every time a pair of Barker shoes is worn, another step in distinctive English shoemaking history is made. Barker will, through a combination of design, quality materials and craftsmanship developed in over a century of shoemaking, offer shoes which epitomize style, superb fit, comfort and excellent value.